You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
Right up Meridian, baby.
All right, folks, welcome back. Scott here from Right Up Meridian. I got Tony staring at me on the screen. Real quick before we get going, it's Indy 500 week. We got qualifications going on. If you want to show the gear, check out Home Field Apparel. They have an entire Indy 500 collection, an Aero McLaren collection. So you can go root on Alexander Rossi or Pato O'Ward. Check them out, Home Field Apparel. Use promo code HOME23 to save 15% off your first purchase. They have tons of great stuff. They have a pretty sweet trucker hat that I know Galen got that he's super fired up about. So there you go. All right, Tuesday night, I had friends over, had a bunch of neighbors over. I was like, all right, we're going to watch the Pacers Knicks because if nothing else, this has been a close series. All the games in MSG are tough to win, but at least it's a close game. That was not the case, man. We got our ass kicked. Just like we kicked ass in game 4, we got our ass kicked in game 5. We're not going to, we'll talk about it high level. I don't want to get into the numbers, but damn, Tony, that was rough.
No fun at all.
No.
And it was weird. It was weird because I want to say it was exactly like game 5. The Pacers got a lead on the road, like looked to be doing pretty well, like, playing pretty decent. And then like 4 minutes to go in the first quarter, the wheels start falling off, and then things just got really out of hand really quickly. I think Rick Carlisle called like 14 timeouts trying to stifle the momentum, and just couldn't stifle that momentum. Obviously, Miles Turner got him back into it for a very brief moment in the third quarter with those 3 straight threes, and then that was followed up by a 17-0 run by the Knicks. So, I'm going
to stop you there because that was a big moment. Miles gets the 3 straight threes. He's looking like he's turning it on. The Knicks call timeout, and then I'm not getting the plays correctly right here, like back to back to back. But like after that, and what's interesting, Miles hit 2 threes. He hit a 3, hit a second 3. And then my buddies here are like, dude, get Miles the ball. And the ball kind of starts swinging around. It's not getting to Miles. It gets to Haliburton. Haliburton then finds Miles. He gets his third 3. But the Pacers come out, and then it's like 4 possessions in a row. It's the Andrew Nembhard show. Like Nembhard, I think, has a turnover. Nembhard takes a shot. And, I have a couple of Haliburton thoughts I wanted to run by you. But it does feel like at that point, Haliburton's got to be like, hey, man, like he found Turner for the third 3. At that point, it's like you've got to understand, you've got to keep feeding him, or you have something going there. And I understand the Knicks might have made some adjustments, so it's not like you're playing by yourself, but it does feel like sometimes I have a couple of Haliburton thoughts, but this is one. The moments like he's got to see like this is the time we got to just keep feeding this or do something. Like this does not need to be Andrew Nembhard running the show at this point.
Yeah, at the very least, put Miles in an action with Haliburton. That if they're going to key on Miles, then Haliburton's got an opportunity to go do something. Because, I'm sure the Knicks in that timeout were like, all right, stop letting this dude just, hit threes here on Hartenstein. But that should have opened things up for a guy like Haliburton, because you put Hartenstein in a ball screen coverage, and all of a sudden he's not in that deep drop because he's afraid of Miles, and some things change there. I'm with you. I was very annoyed with Nembhard because the Pacers actually got to stop after that timeout, had the ball down 7, and Nembhard just like dribbled off his leg out of bounds.
That was it.
And it was like, I remember texting a buddy, I'm like, that's going to be a key play because you've got an opportunity to get that thing down to 5 or 4. All of a sudden the Knicks start tensing up a little bit. Instead, it was like a couple turnovers by Nembhard, a missed shot by Nembhard, and all of a sudden it was like back to 12-13. Super comfortable for the Knicks, and then the wheels came off from there. But I'm with you. I think in those moments you got to have the ball in your best player's hands. Like you just have to. And look, Andrew Nembhard is the reason the Pacers won game 3 on that big shot. I'm not trying to belittle Andrew Nembhard. It's just like there's a pecking order here where your dude you just poured all the money the franchise has ever put into a player, into that guy. Like, he's got to rise to the occasion there.
Well, and he's got to go get the ball. And it's funny.
Exactly.
This was something I think the Celtics had for a while. Again, Nembhard won game 3. Nembhard has been awesome for a second-year player. But you see this with the Celtics, and they had Marcus Smart. It's no knock on these guys, but it always felt like the Celtics, when it really became a very important possession, the ball would always find Marcus Smart, and Marcus Smart would always make kind of questionable decisions because that wasn't his best place to be doing things. And it feels like Nembhard is starting to fit that role for the Pacers. I felt it many times in this playoffs where I've just been saying this is too much Nembhard. And I like Nembhard, but as we all know, Haliburton is the franchise. He's the one who has to get it going. You have, in this case, Turner, who's hit 3 straight threes and seems to have a good matchup. You have Siakam, who's going to become a max player. It's not that it's anything anti-Nembhard. It's just he's probably 4th or 5th on the pecking order. And it does feel like the ball finds him. This is basketball is great this way. Like, the ball's going to find that person every single time. It just does seem like this is where a spot where Haliburton, as the point guard, should do a better job of like calling to get the ball and just kind of getting control of the team.
Yeah, to go to Nembhard first, like, I think he's been awesome. Like, I don't want us talking about like him kind of being the alpha here. I don't want that to come off as like we're shitting on Nembhard, because that's not the case. Like, the dude's averaging 12 points per game in the playoffs,
right?
Almost 5 assists to 1 turnover, shooting 45% from deep. Like, he's been phenomenal. But usually when he's doing those things, it's as the secondary playmaker. It's not as the primary guy. And that's kind of what we're getting at here is like Haliburton's got to go get the ball, demand the ball, and then get guys going. And then if he can come off a ball screen and then he swings it to Nembhard, who then can go do something like, then it's better in a secondary action. But it kind of reminded me of game 1 a little bit, where I don't know if Haliburton's back was acting up again, but it was almost like he was the decoy action a lot of the night. Like, they would go put him on the wing or in the corner. Nembhard would bring it up, and it was almost like Haliburton was a decoy action. So some of that is the way the Knicks were guarding him. Like, they were not letting him get the ball on the break to push the ball up. They were forcing it to Nembhard, and then the way the Pacers work, they're just like, all right, Nembhard will initiate the offense. So some of that is by the Knicks' design, but it's still just it was a little too passive for me from Tyrese Haliburton, especially with how big that game and that moment was.
So a little more on Haliburton, because I spent a lot of time thinking about this, talking to a couple of people about this. And again, I think in the end, this is why making a playoff run in these series is so important. But, Haliburton has been interesting this playoff, so to speak. It's concerning because he is about to get a max contract, which he deserves. And again, this is not shitting on a Haliburton point, but, he's battling some sort of injury. We know that. But on the flip side, in games 2 and 3, he had 34 and 35 points respectively, had a really efficient 20 points on Sunday. And partially those numbers are low because they just smoked the Knicks. And so that was done. So it's not just he's a front runner, he plays at home. It's like, no, he had 34 points in the Garden in game 2, shooting 63% from 3 on 11 shots, 57% from the field. He had a great game 2. So he's obviously healthy enough to have good games. To me, what's more concerning is when he's having rough games, he's completely like not even a decoy. He's just barely even in the play. Like, it's not like he's taking the ball and he's getting it stripped or he can't find the guy to pass to or he's missing shots. He's just not there. Where you look at, Jalen Brunson is all over the place. Even when he has a garbage game like he did in game 5, he's still very active. He's, just not shooting well, but he's still taking 17 shots. You go back to Haliburton, game 5, he took 9 shots. Game 1, he took 6 shots. When he's not doing well, he just completely almost checks out. I don't know what's going on. I guess my question is this, and this will be the $1 million question for next year. Have defenses found out a way to stop Haliburton, and maybe he's finding ways to unlock it, but they're coming back, and he just doesn't have enough counter punches, so to speak, and we'll figure that out next year, I think. Or is this just the moment is too big and then it doesn't get too big? Like, you do a lot of great analysis on the IU side with the film room on the Back Home Network. What do you see? Do you think he's getting figured out? Is it a mental thing? Like, it's really perplexing, because it seems like if he's getting figured out, his reaction of just like, well, I'm just going to stand in the corner, not do anything. That's not awesome for, your point guard who's driving the team. It's fine if you're, a 3-and-D guy, but not for Haliburton. So I'm curious how you view this.
Yeah, it's really weird. And like you mentioned, it's perplexing a bit, because the hardest part is we don't know where his health is at. Because if it's just kind of like nagging stuff that guys are always dealing with, it becomes more concerning, certainly, like the way that he's playing. If he's getting shot up with a bunch of stuff pregame and like he can barely walk, prior to game time and stuff like that, some of this is a bit more understandable. I keep going back though to before the initial hamstring injury, he just looked different. Like, he just was a different player. And really, since that hamstring injury, there's been no consistency in terms of how he's played. Like, he's had the ups and down games and things like that, but like on that in-season tournament run, he was an absolute dog. And there was even like a moxie about him where it was like, I was finally like, this is a dude that's built for this moment. Like, he wants it. He's going to go grab it. And I get the in-season tournament and playoffs are different, but even like at certain times after the injury, just didn't look like he had that, like, skipping around and all that stuff. So it's just weird, because it's one of those things where it's kind of a wait and see, which is, makes you a bit anxious as a fan, because it's like, where are we at? He's not really going to have an off season to bulk up. He's going to, go to the Olympics and probably struggle to fully heal. Like, it is concerning, because you don't really know what it is. But I remember during that in-season tournament, teams were throwing the kitchen sink at him, all kinds of different looks, throwing two, trying to get the ball out of his hands, and the Pacers are just absolutely torching it. Some of this that goes along with it is Buddy Hield was always like his comfortability of like this guy, like he talked about all the time, like the gravity that Buddy Hield had on the floor that just opened things up for him. So I don't know if part of like Buddy's presence not being there is also still messing with him. Some of it is Siakam is now on the floor, and that changes some things spacing wise, and they haven't been able to have an offseason figuring that all out. So there's so many factors involved, and it kind of sounds like excuse making on my end, that outside of just kind of waiting and seeing, it's hard to kind of quantify, I guess, like what's going on. But then you look at his numbers in these playoffs versus the regular season. He's playing 3 more minutes a game in the playoffs. He's shooting it a tad better in the playoffs over the regular season from the floor. He was 36.4% from 3 in the regular season, 36% in the playoffs. He's averaging more rebounds per game in the playoffs. Assists are down by about 2.7, so that's probably the most concerning aspect. Steals are up a hair. Turnovers are exactly in line with the regular season was. So it's more so like his numbers are kind of steady. It's more so the high ebbs and flows of where his game's at. It's not like you can count on him to go get you 18, 20 a night. It's like, no, he's going to have like 3 games of 35, and then he's going to have 2 where he shoots 5 shots. So that's the perplexing part here, is it's like, where are we going? What are we doing here? And then like in the timeout, they said Rick Carlisle in the third quarter told him, like, you need to be more aggressive, like go to the rim. And so it's like, and then who was the announcer? Trying to remember who it was. The game was on TNT, right?
It wasn't Harlan. It was anyway, doesn't matter.
Whoever the analyst was, I can't remember who it was like getting. Oh, it was Van Gundy.
That's right. Yes,
Sam Van Gundy.
Yeah.
He was getting pissed off at Haliburton. Like, Haliburton had a wide open layup, and then he like tried to like do something and almost turned it over to Miles. He's like, shoot that. Like, what are
Yeah.
you doing here? So, like, even Stan Van Gundy was getting a little annoyed with kind of
No, I
how
remember that play.
Haliburton was
That
almost
was I think
trying too
fourth
hard.
quarter, and it's like that was after the timeout where Carlisle's telling him to be aggressive. It's like he had a layup and he's trying to pass it to Turner, who's not even open. There's like three guys behind him. It's a horrible pass. You know, I hear everything you're saying. I'm just going to take the devil's advocate because I've said a lot of the same stuff you've said. You know, and this is where, you know, being in a small market is nice because he's not going to get crushed like if he was in New York or Philly. But on the flip side, you know, we've talked a lot about the Buddy Hield thing of, you know, how much he used Buddy Hield and how, you know, close he was with him. And to me, the counter is not to you, but the counter to that is kind of like, all right, man, like that, I get it, but it's been like 5 months or 4 months of the trade. And like, and by the way, that's basketball. Like, it's one thing if you're talking about like Jordan and Pippen in 98, and it's like, you're going to get rid of Pippen. And it's like, all right, well, they've been together a long time. They have a lot of that. It's like, you're talking about Buddy Hield, a guy who could barely play for the Sixers in the playoffs. Like, if you not having Buddy Hield is a reason you can't perform in the playoffs, we got some big ass problems. Like, there's going to be a lot of dudes coming in and out of this team. You're not going to get everyone to play with your whole time. This is not at you, Tony, but it's just like at the point.
I'm with you.
It's like, you got to be able to, like, fine, that maybe it's 2 weeks of like, shit, man, I'm used to having Buddy right there. Then you got to figure it out. And, you know, all the talk about being, you know, a basketball genius and knowing so much, you know, I think to me, that argument has to kind of end at some point where it's like, all right, man, that's a 6th to 7th guy on your bench. That can't be the key that unlocks your entire ability to play. And obviously it's not, because he's had a lot of good games since Buddy Hield left. But I've heard that, and it's like he's getting the rapport with Turner. Who knows whether Turner is going to be here the next 5 or 6 years? I hope he is, but based on his contract, it might be hard. Different discussion for the offseason. But it's like that's the other. A lot of these things are kind of concerning, and your point of how it's a lot. You know, the numbers even out over a course of a season, but it's that highs and lows that are tough to deal with because when you're paying a guy that franchise tag, you need some of the consistency. And again, I just go back to the thing that concerns me the most is his off games. He's just really ineffective. I'd almost rather him just be taking 25 shots and missing a bunch. And it's like, all right, well, at least he's going for it and doing something, or has the ball in his hands a lot and is trying a lot of passes and getting some turnovers. It's like he's not even being used. And, you know, the Olympics thing, I think we talked to Dustin DePurek about this on the pod, you know, kind of asking, do you think there's any chance he doesn't play in the Olympics? And Dustin said no, which I agree with, man. You want to play in the Olympics. The positive way to look at this is, you know, if you watch the documentary on the Redeem Team on Netflix, that was, you know, young LeBron, young Carmelo, and they were all kind of, you know, there's a story about how they were coming in from the club one night, and it's like there's Kobe going to the gym at like 4:30 a.m. and doesn't say anything, just kind of gives them a look. And then like the next day, I think it was, you know, like LeBron was like, I'm going to go see what he's doing, and goes to the gym with him. I think the story ends with like Carmelo being like, yeah, man, I'm still going to go to the party, which is like kind of a Carmelo story. But, you know, that would be my hope, is that this is what Haliburton can take away from the Olympic experience, is see some of these guys on the team up close and really, you know, pull some of what they're doing in the weight room and the workouts and see like, all right, man, this is what I got to do to take it to that next level. Cause it does feel like he's hitting a wall, which is fine. I mean, it's the Eastern Conference semifinals, as far as we thought we were going to be, but he's definitely hitting a wall in an ability to either take care of it mentally, physically, or on the court. And he's got to figure out a way to break through that.
Yeah. Just looking too at, so prior to his injury, I was just looking at the game logs of what he did. So this is going back to December 23rd against Orlando. I'm gonna recite his points and assist numbers on the games leading up to the injury. 29 and 15 against Orlando. 33 and 10 against Houston. 21 and 20 against the Bulls. 22 and 23 against the Knicks. 26 and 11 against the Bucks. 31 and 12 against the Bucks again. Atlanta, we beat him by 100, so only played 20 minutes. So we had 10 and 18. And then that Boston game where he got hurt was Boston game before he got hurt. We played him back to back. He had 17 and 7 in 35 minutes. Then he got hurt, and then it's been kind of then after that. So here's his numbers directly after the injury: 13 and 10, 15 and 2, 14 and 1, 17 and 4, 18-7, 5-11. So like when you look at prior to injury, like directly before the injury, then directly after the injury, definitely a stark contrast in how he was playing. And so it's tough for me to just know what's going on. It's in just like I think there's just so many factors involved here that it's hard to it's hard for us to just wrap our head around. But at the end of the day, it's like you're the supermax guy, you're on the floor, you got to go out there and produce.
Well, the other thing that's happening is, and again, this is not an excuse because this, but the other thing that's happening is you have a dude on the other side in Jalen Brunson who is unbelievably pissed that he didn't make the Olympic team and Haliburton did. And so just has a fire up his ass to torch this team and to torch. He's not really torching Haliburton because they're really not playing against each other, but he's probably made it his mission and the Knicks' mission to be like, hey, let's show who should have been. I mean, it's kind of stupid, the 12th man, but like the backup point guard on the Olympic team. But I go exactly what you were saying on the Supermax stuff is like every round you get deeper in the playoffs, this stuff's going to be there. Like guys are going to find slights I mean, that's the whole Jordan thing is he found something every single time to go at you. So the idea of like, well, man, just, Brunson's pissed. What are you going to do? It's like, well, because next year somebody else in the semifinals is going to find a reason to be pissed and go at you this way. So you have to figure out how to unlock this. Trying to end on a positive spin is, Haliburton is only 25 now, 24, 25. Like this is his
24.
first run in the playoffs. The idea that he's going to just unlock all of this stuff in his first go around on a team that is fun as hell to watch, but has definite defensive issues and is not a complete team that's ready to compete for an Eastern Conference championship. I think you're asking, and he's also, he's not fully healthy, like asking him to suddenly figure all of this out on this run is a little bit much. So I think it's good that he's getting this experience and kind of seeing, all right, these are the things I need to work on, but we're definitely, let's talk about game 6 and 7 as we wrap up the Haliburton discussion. But I mean, this is whenever this ends, which may come sooner rather than later, he's going to have a lot of things to think about in the offseason of things he needs to work on because you definitely see him hitting a wall. And I think that the team is hitting the wall with him.
Yeah, I'll also say though, in regards to the Olympic roster stuff, like Haliburton makes a lot more sense for international basketball than Brunson does. The way that those two play, like Haliburton is much more of an international player than Brunson. Like Brunson is kind of the foul hunter, has to have the ball in his hands, and like that, it's shown like that type of basketball doesn't really win in FIBA. And hell, even last year in the FIBA World Cup or whatever it was, people were getting pissed that Brunson was playing over Haliburton because the team just functioned better with Haliburton in there. So while Brunson is outplaying Haliburton certainly in this series, I do think Haliburton makes a lot more sense in terms of Olympic basketball.
I agree. So, where this leaves us is, we're going into a Friday game 6. It's now an 8:30 game, so a late tip because the Celtics won their series.
I was a little pissed about that, by the way. I wanted 6.
You wanted the 6? Yeah, I did too. 8:30 is a late start. I've been going with my son, James. He's 11. And it's like, all right, man, you ready to stay up late? He's like, oh, yeah, I'll be fine. I'm like, all right. I foresee that not being the case at 10:15 when he's getting that young kid cranky. And it's like, figure it out, bro, because we ain't leaving the game.
Right. Diet Coke.
Yeah, just
sugar.
Yeah, lots of Diet Coke, sugar. Just get one of the milkshake. The milkshake bar is open. Let's go. I think this is going to come down to kind of, not that I say I predicted it because it wasn't amazingly hard. I think we're going to lose game 5, which you did. I think we're going to win at home. I think we're going to lose game 7. I thought they'd be closer. I could see it. I mean, obviously go either way. I think we're going to win at home game 6. But I'm curious what your thoughts are. I mean, again, this is the beauty of this team is it's like a goldfish. It just doesn't, these things don't seem to matter. They seem to turn around and go back and do it. It's also frustrating because it's like a goldfish and that it's like they figure out what works and then they seemingly stop doing it and Haliburton stops taking the ball and Nembhard suddenly is dribbling off his leg in a key possession. But it does feel like to me that that they're going to shake all of this off, come back, home, and it also feels like for the NBA, this might be a way to get a 7-game series. So I could see them extending it with some calls. But what again, calls had nothing to do with game 4 or 5. They just kicked the living shit out of us. But what do you think for game 6?
Yeah, this is why I love playoff basketball, because it truly is like the chess match of here's games 5, the Knicks insert McBride into the starting lineup, and he was kind of giving Haliburton some hell out there on the defensive end, and there was very noticeably a concerted effort to go after every rebound, like the effort level of Hartenstein on the rebounds. I mean, the dude had 12 offensive rebounds in game 5. Like, that was a concerted effort for, like, they saw something on film. Like, look, they're not boxing out. Look how they do that. Like, they were after every ball. So now Pacers are going in film. They're dissecting all of this rebounding and how their rebounding strategy. They're going to come out and they're going to rebound better just by nature of looking at the film. And then they're going to see what the Knicks were doing against Haliburton defensively and switch some things up there. I'm with you on game 6. I think, obviously the home teams won every game in this series, and the way the Pacers have played at home, knock on wood, haven't lost a home game in a couple months, and so it'll be fun if they can win that game 6, which I think they do. Sim in game 7, but it'd be fun to have a game 7 on a Sunday. Kind of all eyes of the NBA are on the Pacers and Knicks, and so that's certainly what I'm rooting for. Obviously, as a Pacers fan, is to push this thing to 7. But I think it'd be good for just the experience of this roster as well to experience a game 7 back against the wall. You're in the most hostile environment probably in the NBA this season, and so. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with those.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like the game 3, I'm taking game 4 kind of out of it just because the stats are really skewed because so many of the starters played well and then didn't play. So the overall stat lines don't show up great. But, I'm looking at Siakam, who you take the first 2 games in Milwaukee out where he was just dynamite. Since then he's been, and this is the reason why Siakam is going to get the max this offseason is, he wasn't going to keep up the pace of scoring 38 points a game. Only Jalen Brunson seems to be able to do that. But since then, Siakam's point total is 17, 13, 12, 19, 19, 14, 26, 14, 22. Like he's going to get you, 12's not awesome, but he's getting you that 15 to 24 points a game. And normally in a pretty efficient manner of shooting somewhere between 40 and 60% from the field. 40 is not great, but it's starting to ebb up. But you look at game 3, he goes 9 for 14, shoots 64% from the field, 26 points, 7 rebounds. That's the kind of Siakam game that I think we need to have. We need to get somebody else going. It'd be great to see a couple of Haliburton shots go in early. But I think that this Pacers team has found something with this crowd. They get buoyed by it. The Knicks had trouble in game 3, kind of closing it out as Milwaukee did in some of the close games in Indianapolis. I think this is just going to be a home and home series. So I also think the Pacers are going to win Friday night. They also have a little bit of rest, so whatever's bugging Haliburton should help them out a little bit. If OG plays, I think that's slightly different, but I don't think that's enough to swing game 6. We probably won't pod before game 7 because it's going to be a quick turnaround on a weekend. But let's just assume the Pacers win game 6. I stand by what I said. I just don't see this team winning a game 7 in MSG. That's going to take stones of steel. Maybe I should rename the title of the podcast, Stones of Steel. I just don't see that. And there's no knock. I don't think this team's ready to do that. And that's a game where, you're not going to get the calls, nor should you. That's why you get a game 7 at home. And that's a game where, I was thinking this in game 5, and I was telling people I was with, the trouble we had is like we were down by 10 or 12 in the fourth quarter. I'm like, we need to be up by 7 or 10 because if this game's close, we're not going to win it, and we're going to either get screwed out or we're just not going to make the right plays. Like if you want to win a game 7 on the road, you have to go into the last 2 minutes up by 7 to give yourself a little bit of room to not let the officials sway it. And
they have the best player on the floor.
Yes, and you're right. Yeah,
they like the ref thing. Really was just game one. I think where most rational Pacers fans are pissed about. In defense of the Knicks as well, like they were the number one most fouled team in the league,
right.
and the Pacers fouled more than any other team in the league. So like some of this is just like by nature of how both teams play, where the foul discrepancy and free throw discrepancy is fairly vast.
Well, and that's what I mean real quick about game 7 is it's not that the refs are going to skew it. It's just that, if there's marginal calls, Brunson's going to get them at home as he should. It's just, and they are a foul hunting team. That's what they do.
I will say this about a game 7. If it does get to that, the Knicks are very like free flowing and free playing at a game 7 or at home. A game 7, like even if you're at home, I do feel like your butt's a little tighter.
Yeah.
Like and so maybe there's something there where like the Pacers obviously get tight when they play there, but maybe the Knicks get a little bit tight too, just based on like, all right, it's win or go home here. Because I mean, let's be honest, the Knicks are playing with one starter, and then the rest of it is guys that were slotted to be like 6 through 9 for them, and so they've got some guys that are playing well, certainly. I mean, shoot, Alec Burks comes off the bench and shoots 5 of 8. That dude had 1 point in the whole playoffs prior to game 3 of this series. So everything I saw in terms of reports is that Anunoby's not coming back for this series.
Right.
And so you would like to think with the Pacers roster, like that they're in a better spot roster-wise. This thing goes to 7, like maybe somehow, some way that you're just, it's going to be like a 40-hour turnaround in terms of that game 7. If it gets there, maybe just because you've got fresher legs, the Knicks, it's been taking a toll on them, but that's wishful thinking as well.
Yeah. Well, no, but there's something there that, you assume based on the way that teams normally travel. This is probably a stupid thought, but the Pacers probably left New York Tuesday night. So they got their ass kicked and they just flew out. They got home. They were here, late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning. They've been in Indy in their own homes, in their environment since Wednesday morning. The Knicks probably came in on Wednesday, maybe Thursday. I don't know when they came in, but more than likely one of those 2 days they're coming in. They're going to have to, so they have that flight sooner, and then both teams are going to turn around after the game Friday and go out. But it's like the Pacers are doing that after basically being on a 4-day homestand, and it's just a quick turnaround. And you're right. I mean, with an 8:30 game, you're now talking about a 40 to 38 hour turnaround for probably a 3:30 or a 1:30 game on Sunday for a game 7. I don't know what other games could be scheduled for Sunday. I think this would be the only one. So it'd probably be that noon or 1:30 slot. So you're talking about a real quick turnaround with, the Knicks doing 3 flights in 5 or 4 days, with the Pacers not doing that. So I think there is something there. And, you mentioned like, Deuce McBride and some of the other guys for the Knicks. Those are role guys who had big games at MSG. I don't see that happening in game 6. I think those guys are going to fall to earth, and the Pacers role guys will step up. So I'm with you on that there's a world where the Knicks look as flat in game 7 as they did in game 4, because that was also a quick turnaround. That was a, Friday night's game was, I think, game 3, getting all but the game 3 was like a 7:00 start, I believe. And then game 4 was a 3:30 the next day. So if you're doing an 8:30 to 1:30 or 8:30 to 3:30 game 6 to 7 turnaround, it's even tighter with a flight in between. There's a world where the Knicks come out looking as flat as they did in game 4 for game 7.
Absolutely. And like, that's just like physics, it's like that's just how it is. But all that to say, if you watched game 5, you would say that the Pacers look like the team that's worn down, and the Knicks were the ones that had, some pep in their step in terms of energy and whatnot. So it's just hard to gauge where that's at just based on.
No, that's totally fair. The last thing I'll say is it is frustrating. Again, just continue to be the frustrating mid-market, small market Pacers fan. Is, you know, if we win or we go to game 7 or we somehow win this series, it's going to be, oh, well, they didn't play the Bucks with Giannis and Dame got hurt, and 4 of the starters in the Knicks are out, which, by the way, are all true. And by the way, fully understand the Celtics are a much better team than the Pacers, but you don't hear a lot of like, man, the Celtics really lucked out that Donovan Mitchell didn't play a lot in the second series, and you don't hear any of that. It's just, oh man, the Celtics are good and they kick a shit out of the Cavs. It's like you don't hear that 4 of the Cavs starters, I think, were out for game 5. And like no one's like, oh, the Celtics lucked out on that on a tough game 5, No, it's just, oh, the Celtics are good and they won. And it's a little bit tough because like that is true. Like the Celtics are just a better team, but it is really frustrating that it's kind of this double standard that for good teams, injuries, whatever, they would have won anyway. But for the Pacers, it's like, oh man, they're just, if any of these guys didn't get hurt, they would have been, blown out in the first round. I'm not sure that's the case. It just is a little frustrating to have cold water thrown on all the accomplishments we're proving this offseason.
Yeah, even in game 4 when we were up 40, it was the whole narrative was about the Knicks and what they were missing.
Right.
And it's like we were playing out of our minds. Like there was nobody beating the Pacers that day the way they shot the ball.
Yeah. And that's if we win, if next time we talk, we're previewing Eastern Conference Finals, like first off, holy shit, we did it. Secondly, that's the thing that I would say is I would definitely not bet and or pick us to beat the Celtics. But, this is what makes this team unique and special is unlike the Cavs or the Magic or some other teams that have not gone as far or in the same spot, when the Pacers are humming, they can beat anybody at any time. Now they have a hard time getting humming and they have a hard time keeping that up. But when they are playing well and they're hitting on all cylinders, they will beat anybody in the East.
Absolutely. And I think part of that is, that game 4 effort defensively was what did it, right? Like,
right.
They shot the ball really well, but that was their best defensive effort of the season. Game 5, the Knicks come out and just got offensive rebound off. I think in the first half, it was like 5 shots the Knicks shot that were they didn't get an offensive rebound. Which
Hartenstein, someone's got to keep Hartenstein off the boards.
Absolutely. Like, put 2 on him if you have to box him out. Like, when he's getting 12 offensive rebounds. Good for him. He just got himself paid. He's an unrestricted free agent after this season, so he's going to go make some money somewhere. But yeah, it's just one of those things where, in terms of where the Pacers are at, they're playing with house money, but it'd be kind of fun to keep playing with that house money into next week.
Yep. So what do you think? I think we see a win, and I just think it plays out the way I thought. Home, and home. I think we see a win and a loss. I will end, I think we win by 7 or 10. I think it'll be not a blowout. It won't be a last second shot on game 6. I think game 7, I think it'll be similar. I think it'll be close. I think the Pacers will be within 10 for most of the game, but they'll never be close enough to threaten to win. And then the Knicks will pull. I see game 6 and game 7 being very similar, with a Pacers win and a Knicks win happening. What do you think?
I'm going to go for it.
Let's go!
I think the Pacers win game 6. It's similar fashion, handily, but not like 40-point blowout handily. And then they go to game 7. It's a quick turnaround for the Knicks. They almost are feeling invincible in terms of how they've played at Madison Square Garden. They overlook the hungry young Pacers. The hungry young Pacers come in, and they actually win in MSG handily. They just come out firing all cylinders. They're made for that moment, and the Pacers win. And we're gonna clip this after it happens, and we're gonna post it all over the internet. If it doesn't, we're gonna delete this podcast, and nobody's gonna hear from it ever again. But yeah, I'm gonna go Pacers win it in 7.
All right, man. I love it. I like where your head's at. Does Tyrese have a moment in MSG? Like that's the thing that hasn't happened yet is somebody from the Pacers
like
having
moment where
a moment.
He like does a choke sign and
or just it's been there where he does he hit 2 or 3 threes? Honestly, I guess Miles Turner's the closest one to have a moment, but it kind of doesn't matter because it was in a route.
Yeah, I think Tyrese has a big game 7. I think he kind of gets people talking again about like this is a young budding star in the NBA, and I'm excited about it. I think the Pacers have a good opportunity in front of them.
All right. Well, it all starts Friday night, 8:30 tip, a late game. Be out there, and as a Pacer season ticket holder, as someone who podcasts about it, and you and I watch way too many of the games, a lot of them. I'm excited to go just because this is the last time we see this team. A lot of these guys are re-signed outside of Obi Toppin for next year, which I hope we keep. But for the most part, we'll see a lot of these guys back next year. But this group has been a lot of fun to watch in this iteration of this team. Things are going to change. There'll be some changes in the offseason. I just want to watch this team one more time. And even if they lose, it is what it is. But this has been a really fun run, unexpected. And they've provided, an in-season tournament run, a lot of good games throughout the year. And I just, I think I'm going into it like hopefully a lot of other fans that I'd love to see us beat the Knicks. But I also just want to see this team one more time and just kind of be there to cheer them on. And if it's the last time I see them this year, I just want to be there to see them one more time.
Yeah, super fun season, but that's all I'm going to say because I think it's going to keep going.
All right, there you go. We'll be podcasting Monday either way, and I hope that Tony's right. So, Tony, as always, thank you for being here, and for you guys out there listening, as always, thank you for listening. This is Scott for the Right Up Meridian podcast, signing off.